Alright, Bryan. We're live for this week's podcast.
Alright.
And let's see.
My connection is probably not the best. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to see when it's going live here.
You're live now, you know that, right?
Yes, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just waiting for it to go live on YouTube. Alright, so yeah, we're live.
The connection might be a little bit different now.
Yeah, so Bryan's over on the East Coast this week.
Yeah.
But the connection's probably going to be worse, right?
Maybe.
We'll see.
So what are we talking about?
Alright, so this week we're going to talk about a few different things. So I had one customer asking about, or one person asking about pay access for Wi-Fi networks, right? So,
Right.
so I know in the past, like some vendors have had this built in to their Wi-Fi system where you could link a PayPal account and charge for Wi-Fi access. It seems like a lot of them are taking those functions out now. I know we're talking about possibly adding it as a feature to the Ingenious cloud router when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, we actually even talked about building it within the cloud interface, not with the gateway.
Not even requiring the gateway, just building it into the cloud interface.
Yeah.
So that's
right now
something.
We have the voucher service, which you and I talked about before. We just talked about my PSK, so we do have elements built into the cloud that help in different situations. But yeah, we don't have it tied to like a PayPal account or something like that. If that's
Right.
what you're referencing, right?
Yeah. So it's possible to add that feature in the Ingenious Cloud so that you could just link a PayPal account and set up an SSID, and you could charge for Wi-Fi access, right? But there's also there's a bunch of services out there that'll do this for you. I know, I was looking at a few this morning, like Cloud for Y, like we've used before with the previous EWS systems, right? Cloud for Y, Purple Wi-Fi, and there's another one called Splash Access. All these will allow you to do a.
Oh, what about I'm sorry to cut you off. What about All Cities product?
All City, yeah. That's a hardware product. We have to buy their gateway, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so that's another one that'll do it. So, but let's just talk about some of these software ones. So I looked at them, and they're all pretty expensive. That's why people are kind of looking for another option. Like they charge at like 20% of the fee. So if you're charging, $10 an hour, they're going to take 20% of that, right? So that's pretty high. And then it looks like they have like huge yearly fees too. They won't even let you create like a demo account because they want their sales team to sell it to you. So I think they have like a $400 yearly fee. Someone was telling me for a lot of these services too. Yeah, so it's kind of price prohibitive for a lot of these smaller businesses, I think, to do
like
this sort of
Marina,
thing. Yeah, they're the ones that want to do it, and it's probably not going to pay off for them to use these services. Now, the Ingenious Cloud does have an API, right? So that you may be able to roll your own using the Cloud API and PayPal, but that's something that you'd have to, I guess, figure out if it's worth it.
Time on your side and
investment. Yeah, it's investment on your side, time on your side, because it's not that widely used a feature that I think Ingenious or a lot of these other companies are gonna, put that to the front to develop, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do have the ability to implement like PayPal because that was we did have that discussion. We just don't see it as a major demand with the customer base that we work with.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of the biggest thing. Like we don't see a lot of usage for it, but maybe that's changing. I don't know. We see it from just a couple customers. We know other manufacturers have implemented it, but have kind of moved away from it because they didn't see the demand as well. So
right.
But yeah, there is the option of using APIs and investing, your engineering time to implement it yourself, that kind of thing.
Right. Let's see. Okay. So the other thing, yeah. So I mean, the API is definitely a possibility. I've used it for. We've looked into it for another customer that had like a situation like this, and it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty well documented. We can get you that info if you want it, but it'll take time to develop if you want to develop your own paywall. It's probably a good thing because people would like to use it, but it's probably not on the roadmap right away. All right, so another thing we want to talk about, RV park and marina Wi-Fi. We've gotten a lot of requests for that this time of year, right?
Tons of it, yeah. With the pandemic and everything, we've gotten a lot of RV parks. A lot of them.
Yeah, there's lots of RV, more than you'd know. Yeah.
What was that?
There's more RV parks and marinas out there than anyone would know, right? Like they all want Wi-Fi.
Yep, they want Wi-Fi. I just recently stayed at one, first time ever.
Yeah.
They had a mixture of vendors. We were one of the vendors in there.
Nice.
But quite honestly, I mean, we were there. We were there only for a couple of days, but we didn't use Wi-Fi at all. But we know a lot of customers go there, or we're finding that people are going there because they're working from home, or we're working from home, and they're working from these RV parks.
Yeah.
So that connection is pretty important to a lot of their customers that are going to these different areas.
Yeah, and I mean it's important to the customers, but the RV parks and marinas themselves, they have limited budget, limited IT staff. And it's
normally the owner, right?
Yeah, it's usually the owner or the maintenance guy that's going to set up the Wi-Fi, and it's just never. They never have the budget to do it right. The first thing they want to do is they think they can mesh or they can bridge everything wirelessly, and we kind of tell them no, don't do that because you're just going to make a mess. That it's not going to work. It may work for a little bit, then it's going to stop working, and then next year you're going to revisit it again and put some more meshing or bridging, and that's going to make it even worse, right?
Yep. Yeah, but we do work with some guys though that know what they're doing and can implement like a solution properly. The one is Wentworth. They're really good, and they have multiple. But there are some guys that can do it, that know how to do it and know what to deal with because they have experience in it. Kind of like what we do. We have experience in it because we've done it for so long, for at least 15 years.
Yeah, and I mean the key is to wire the access points in. You're gonna have to, trench, run cables out to the RV sites or the piers. Get them as close as possible to the RVs and boats. And put multiple APs. You're not going to be able to cover the whole RV park or marina with one AP. You're not going to be able to put big antennas on it and get it to cover the whole area. It's just not going to work. The iPhone or the smartphone is the lowest common denominator as far as distance. So you're only going to get as far away from the access point as the iPhone can reach, which is about 300 feet line of sight or even less.
Yeah.
When you have an RV.
Trying to penetrate like an RV too. For sitting inside, so that's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So that it's hard because you're trying to penetrate through like a 10 box basically. You're trying to have roaming, and you're trying to cover the outdoor spaces of this area. So there's a lot of parameters you have to meet. I mean that's true for like every area, but the X factor is the is the RV and trying to penetrate through those walls of the RV, which can be difficult to do.
Yeah, and I mean, what we're seeing is like these RV parks. They usually have like a post in the front of every lot, with hookups and things like that, electrical hookups, and you're gonna need to put like a smaller access point maybe on every third one of those. If you have a lineup of, if you have them in a line, maybe every third you're gonna need to put an access point. That's how many you're gonna need to put to get good coverage.
Yeah, you almost have to think of it as every RV park.
Yeah.
Or
every slot, wherever it's called, a site.
It's almost
a site.
Like a hotel, like in-room, like Wi-Fi, right?
Right.
You have an AP per
2 or 3 rooms.
Maybe not per slot, but yeah, then you have to be careful of not having too many, so you have to get that balance. And you might even have to use multiple SSIDs. I know we don't like to talk about that, but we ran into a particular issue where the only thing we could really do is use different SSIDs to make sure clients were in their area. Now, the thing with RV parks is that there is some roaming, but typically the end user's staying in their one area. They're not really moving around too much.
Right.
And if they are, it's to go down to like not necessarily the lobby, but like the market if they have a market or something like that. So that's the only time that roaming really comes into play. But if they're walking around, riding bikes and things like that, it's really not an issue. So really, the user stays right around their area where the RV is.
Right.
From my personal experience now, being in one and actually, kind of going through that process, thinking about the end user and what you need in regards to Wi-Fi and things. So.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, I understand the kind of pressures that are under, like, they probably give them so much of a budget every year. They're just like, fix this, right? And like everyone wants, every single site needs good Wi-Fi, but probably the way to do it is to do it a little bit at a time. Every year add more access points in front of more sites. Not try to do some sort of new meshing system every year, and then throw away last year's because it's not working and try a different one because they're not going to work.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you definitely phase it out, and then the areas that do have the Wi-Fi, maybe you mark up those slots a little bit.
Yeah,
more
exactly. That's a good idea.
The cost. And then as you move through the park, you balance out all the costs across all the slots. But that might be the way to. That's probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Typically, when we do large deployments, we want to do a phased approach, specifically in outdoor, because there's so many different you have interference, you have a lot of different things that are happening, so you definitely want to do it in a phased out kind of approach, especially those larger RV parks where they're you have 200, 300, 400 slots. It gets if you try to do it all at one time, it becomes a problem, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times they'll have to put like some smaller switches out there, maybe like the ECS 1008P, put those out in a waterproof box somewhere in front on those site posts, and then kind of string those site to site. You can just use Cat 5e or whatever between sites to connect those switches up, and the switch can provide power for the smaller APs like the ECW 160 and ECW 260, right? 160, 260, yeah. So it'll power both of those. The 260 is the
one I would use.
Yeah.
We have a 160, but the 260's
much better. Wi-Fi
AP,
6
works really well.
Yeah.
That's the one I would go to.
Yeah, so string put multiple switches out there. Don't try to do it all from the office or try to do you could use a wireless bridge kit to maybe put one access point location in somewhere, but then what happens is in an RV park or a marina, you're gonna have signal from all these access points they have all over the place interfering with that bridge. So it's probably not a good option for these types of setups.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
And meshing is just off the table for this sort of thing because it just is not going to work. Don't even go that way.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure, really.
Yeah.
And because not like when I say failure, what I mean is the expectation of the end user is to have a connection and the connection to be fairly fast. And when you involve like repeating or meshing, that's where performance really will start to come down when you start to mesh.
Right.
Yeah, so you're really kind of stretching the access points a little thin. So yeah, I would definitely stay away from meshing.
Yeah, you could buy the best, most expensivest equipment, and and at the end of the day, if you're just trying to mesh, it's not going to work well. I mean, especially in these like high density environments, right?
Yeah, and so just I'll repeat what we've said before. Meshing is not roaming, and roaming is not meshing.
Right.
So we're not talking about if you don't have meshing going on, you still can roam. So
you still can roam. Roaming is walking between the coverage area, one access point and another, and it should your device should switch over automatically, and that is just roaming, and that works with any access point with the same SSID, same passphrase, and encryption scheme. So even between different vendors, you should be able to walk between one another. It should at some point let go of the one you're on and roam over to the new one. That's dependent on the client device. So and you can do things with the access points to encourage the roaming. Let's say, right?
Yeah.
But it's in the end it's down to the client device, but it should do it automatically.
Yes.
And we've talked about this before. So, all right. So, one other thing I wanted to touch on this week. Someone was asking me about when to use fiber, how the modules work with the switches, and generally, like if you have, if you're within 100 meters, 320 feet between switches, you can just use regular Cat 6 or Cat 5e to link those switches. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Most cost effective, although some people have been telling us that once they're big on fiber that they have the kit to terminate fiber. They said they could do it faster than they could with Ethernet cable, right?
Yeah, and fiber is becoming more and more flexible
it's easier to pull,
easier to pull.
So
I mean, you have to be careful if you don't break the cable or something like that. That could be bad.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have experience with fiber, go ahead and use it. But I'd say most people don't. And in that case, just use regular Cat 6e, or Cat 5e, Cat 6, and
I would use Cat 6.
Cat 6, yeah.
Or just use Cat 6.
Yeah, it's not as flexible sometimes, but the new. The new stuff. It's not as easy to terminate too. I've seen, but either way, the Cat 6, you can bury this stuff, run it overhead, whatever. There's different types of cable, but I've seen that just regular cable holds up even when you bury it. If you get into some of these outdoor rated ones, sometimes it's too thick and it's like rigid and it can break the connectors on the access points and things like that. So. Yeah, be a little careful with that. You don't need super heavy-duty cable to run outdoors. I haven't seen, I've had stuff in the ground for years, just regular indoor rated cabling. But that's up to you. That's preference. But so if you want to use fiber, so these switches have either SFP or SFP plus slots on them, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah. All of our 24 port, 48 ports have SFP plus, which is up to 10 gigabit per second. So then we have 2 8 ports. The one 8 port has no uplink ports or SFP, but there's another 8 port that has the option of Ethernet or SFP. So we do have the modules that go. Those modules would go into the switches, into those ports.
Yep.
But yeah, when you're going over 100 meters or 328 feet, that's when you would get into going into fiber.
Yeah, that's when you would absolutely have to use it. There's no way of putting a switch in between there, right? So, and that we see that like between floors and high-rise buildings, things like that. That's when you might want to do that if you're going every other floor or something like that, right? You may need to do that. And as far as which module you need, like there's multi-mode, single mode, it really depends on the fiber that you're using, right? So you got to work with your fiber guy that's doing the installation to figure out what modules you're going to need, right?
Yeah.
And Ingenious has a full range of single mode, multi-mode, long range, short range. So there's we have over 300 meter module single mode, right?
Yeah.
I believe.
mean, we have.
Yeah, I'm looking at it real quick here.
So I mean, the one module, it's good for
So the single mode's good for 10 kilometers, right? So we have those, and also, so we can get you these Ingenious modules. Like, they're kind of special order, but if you need them, let me know. I can send you a quote and get these for you, or you can pretty much use any compatible ones out there. I mean, you'd have to test them. We're not going to say every single module works, but from what we've seen, they're pretty well compatible with any SFP Plus module out there, right? They could pretty much will work.
What I've noticed, though, I mean, are the SFP modules that we're selling more and more now. Typically, the customers that are buying our switches are buying our modules as well.
Yep. And if there's problems, let's put it this way: like, the Ingenious modules have been tested with the switches, so we know these work. And if you're using another, manufacturer's module, it's probably going to work, but you may run into some weird problem down the road, right?
Yeah, we can't verify all modules, so we're going to verify our own modules, right? And we're going to get support we're going to support you on our modules. Now, when we get into another manufacturer's modules, we're going to help you as much as possible, but there's going to be a big question mark when we can't figure out the issue, and we don't know if it's compatibility issue with that module. So it just makes things more complicated, and it takes the process a lot longer. Whereas if you're using one of our modules, we're obviously going to support you regardless, because you're using our switch and our module. But we can also, if there's a problem for whatever reason, we have the modules in house where we can actually test the scenario to see what's happening. And we can test it on the product line side, the product management side, and the engineering side. So it just makes it easier, and the process is faster. So that's why we typically recommend using our modules. Yeah,
if you're using a lot of the Ingenious switches, I mean, it makes sense to use the modules too. And if you have like a module that you've been using, it should work. But if it's like a mission critical type application, you may want to think twice about it, right? Like, you may want to try the Ingenious modules.
I think the biggest thing is, like, everything that we build, or not everything, a majority of things that we build are standard.
Right.
Standardized. So it should, if you're working with our switch, which is standard, and you're working with another module that is also standard, it follows the standards, then, most likely it's going to work. What I'm saying is that when it comes down to if there's a problem with the two working together for whatever reason, maybe it's a small problem that we'd have to troubleshoot. If you're not using one of our modules, that troubleshooting process will take longer because we're not familiar with that module.
Right.
So we can't test that module internally. We can only test our modules and say, okay, this is working the way it should. We're not sure why your module's not working with it, and so then you're contacting another manufacturer to see, hey, am I missing something, and troubleshooting, that kind of thing. So modules should be pretty easy, though.
They should be pretty easy, but they can get, there can be a lot involved, like the environmentals on them, how much heat they're putting out, and things like that. So, it seems simple, but I would at least test your application first if you're going to use a specific one. And I also want to throw this out. You can also use the Twin-X cables, which are like copper straight through crossover cables. And to link switch to switch, and you can go. So if you have like two 24-port switches in a rack and you want to link them, just these cables are really inexpensive. You can just plug between SFP Plus ports and get a 10 gig uplink between switches.
Yep.
Or even you could.
You're using that now.
I'm using that now. Yeah, actually, I have a Ruckus switch and an Ingenious switch connected with the Twin-X cable, and you can also link. You can also link to a desktop if you have a SFP Plus port installed in a desktop, which I do. You can get a cheap 10 gigabit connection right to your desktop.
Yeah.
So that's another good way to use those. Yeah. All right, so I think that's all we had today. Pretty good for your remote location. We haven't. I don't see any breakups here, so that's good. So we're a little later today, but we're gonna try this again next week. You're gonna be at the beach, right?
I'm gonna be at the beach.
All right, good. Let's see how that connection is. All right, so remember to like and subscribe for more help with Wi-Fi.